but only in disclosing what is on his mind. And isn't that the truth? Sometimes people just kind of spew out everything that they have on their mind.
I got to get this off my chest.
Oh, dear. Yeah, that's a really bad way to handle things.
You may be one choice away from a thriving marriage. Welcome to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast with Bryon and Jennifer Harvey.
Welcome back to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast. Bryon Harvey here with my amazing wife, Jen.
Well, hi, Bryon. We're also here with our fantastic producer, Todd, and glad to be wrapping up this 3-part series talking about having conversations and having good communication, even when you're having conflicts with your spouse.
Yeah. So if you haven't yet listened to the last 2 episodes, we encourage you to do that. You don't have to, but it'll make more sense because these skills that we're talking about build on each other. And really the core of this mini-series for the podcast has revolved around this idea that couples often know what to do to have healthy conflict, listen in a way that your spouse wants to talk to you, speak in a way that your spouse wants to listen to you, fight fair, don't keep receipts. A lot of episodes that we've had in the past catalog of our episode, but they don't know how to do it in the moment.
Sure.
And their emotions are high, and how do we actually use these skills that we know we should be using?
Mm-hmm. In other words, how do we implement this just in the thick of the conflict and the argument and in managing emotions?
Right. The big issue that marriage books, marriage podcasts, sermons, just talking to friends, even when it comes to advice about communication, it presumes that you're calm enough to think rationally about these things. But when you're entering into conflict, usually you're not calm.
Right, just out of the gates, it's like you're upset and your emotions can really get the better of you.
Yeah, this is start of the conflict. So in episode 101, we talked about the importance of being aware of how your body responds to stress and catching yourself early when you feel those physical reactions to stress.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what we want to do is we want to, get the awareness that you have about how your body responds to that, the stress, catching yourself as you feel yourself getting angry. And then in that just last episode, we talked about these different techniques to just help you prepare your body, prepare your mind, and manage
Everyone
your emotions.
hates to hear it. Calm down.
Right. But, and again, you do not say calm down to an adult, but how do you recognize what's going on in yourself and, prepare yourself to calm down? Yeah. Do not tell your spouse to calm down. That will end badly.
We talked about that. But it's okay to tell yourself, hey, I need to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, I will say that to myself, Bryon, you need to calm down now.
Mm-hmm.
You need to bring this in. And so in this episode, in episode 101, and 102, we talked about preparing for the conflict. If you've caught yourself, if you've calmed down, you'll be in the right headspace to use all those tools that you know how to use in the conflict. You'll be able to speak in a way that's kind and loving. You'll be able to listen in a loving way. You'll be able to focus on what's the real issue and not bringing up receipts from the past. You'll be able to focus on the A issue, not the B issues. All those things that those skills. And the back catalog of the OTM podcast, we've got a lot of episodes that can help you build those skills or learn more about those skills. We encourage you to take a look at the back catalog and take advantage of those. But the thing we want to talk about today is, okay, now you've calmed down, you've used all those tools. How do you end the conflict in a healthy way?
Right, because we don't want to have things happening in conflicts, and I'm sure you'll recognize some of this manifesting in conflicts that you've had and maybe that you've seen others have, that the conversations can very easily turn competitive. They can circle endlessly and often... Oh, circle endlessly? Yes. And end with someone feeling unheard. And you don't want to have any of those 3 things happen.
Yeah, that can happen. But something else that couples mistakenly assume that resolving the conflict means agreeing. And that's something that we'll get into in a minute, because you may resolve the conflict and never agree on the actual issue you started with. It may be one of those, I don't like the language, but it works here, agreeing to disagree.
Sure.
Because what's the goal of the conflict? And we're going to get into that in a minute. And the other thing is, couples misunderstand being understood means being validated.
Right.
And I think the biggest example of this is not between couples, but in politics. It's like the left or the right side of politics, you can be understood, and I still disagree with you. So
Sure.
I understand. I understand your logic. I understand your reasoning. I understand how you got there, and I understand why you think the way you do, but I'm not going to validate that because I disagree with you. There's something in your logic. There's something in your presuppositions. There's something in the place you started from. I don't necessarily agree with you, but that doesn't mean I don't understand you. And in your marriage, there's going to be times when it's like, hey, your spouse understands you. They get where you're coming from, and they love you, and they hear you, but they don't necessarily agree with where you're at. You can be understood without being validated, without being told you're right. That's that myth of tolerance. Tolerance is we can both have different opinions and still enjoy being together, not we all have to have the same opinion.
Absolutely. And I think it is important that you don't invalidate your spouse, and you're doing everything you can do to understand where your spouse is coming from.
For sure, but being understood doesn't mean, okay, I've validated this. It's not, okay, you're right. The other thing is, individuals will fall into the trap of wanting to be right at the expense of being close.
Oh my goodness, isn't that the truth? Because you have to just decide for your marriage, is it important to you to be right, or is it important for you to be close? And that's something that you can't achieve both most of the time, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely, because then it becomes winners and losers, right? And if one of you loses, you both lose.
That's it.
You say that all the time in the podcast. When you get into these situations, when you start, they become competitive or circle endlessly, or people aren't being heard or understood. The result is these conversations feel like battles instead of bridges. And we've said this many times on the podcast. Every conflict that you have is an opportunity to become closer. But if you're not ending it well and not ending it with the right goal in mind, then you're not going to get closer, and you could still end the conflict, but you haven't really resolved it.
Right.
You haven't grown closer. You've just, and this happens in every marriage. I don't want to fight anymore, so we're just going to do what you want to do. You're not closer in that moment. You've just ended the fight. You're actually creating a level of distance between the two of you. And I'm not saying that that's not the right answer sometimes, but you've got to remember that you haven't actually met the goal of growing closer. You've just ended the uncomfortable conversation.
And that's not a good way to resolve conflict.
It doesn't resolve the conflict. It just ends the conversation.
And what I always like is the advice that Proverbs gives us in chapter 18. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in disclosing what is on his mind. And isn't that the truth? Sometimes people just kind of spew out everything that they have on their mind.
I got to get this off my chest.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's a really bad way to handle things. And again, we've talked about this in past podcast episodes and also in our book, Operation Thriving Marriage. But you want to take that pleasure and understanding and make those efforts to understand your spouse.
Yeah, so the first step in ending conflict is changing the goal from winning the argument to being close. The outcome isn't I want the argument to be over. The outcome is I want to be closer to you. I want to have a stronger relationship and stronger connection to you because of what we've been through together.
And healthy conflict resolution when you are both understood and heard, and that you feel that you're understood and you feel that you're heard. So of course, understanding doesn't necessarily equal an agreement, and being heard does not necessarily equal an endorsement.
Yeah, and it doesn't even necessarily mean healthy resolution. Doesn't even necessarily mean making a decision. Mm-hmm. You could be healthily resolving the conflict and deciding not to decide. Mm-hmm. Realizing, this wasn't what we thought was an important issue that had to be decided.
Sure.
Wasn't that important after all.
And a lot of times at this point, you'll determine that the decision is often obvious to both of you, or that no decision needs to be made.
And that's the funny thing. I love that. When you get off of when you pull yourself off target, it's like, okay, I've got to win this. I've got to get this decision. I've got to convince my spouse to do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. When you take that and change your sight picture, change your target to, I want to be close to my spouse. It's funny how often couples will look at the situation and giggle. It's like, why were we fighting about this in the first place?
Sure.
It's obvious that we should have done this, that we should go on this vacation, that we should resolve the parenting issue this way, that we should get this type of furniture, or whatever it is. It becomes so obvious. But when you got target fixated on your preferred outcome rather than being focused on being close, you lost sight of the forest for the trees.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes if a decision does need to be made, it might be something where it might take a little bit more time to kind of talk through, work through, manage different logistics and different competing interests sometimes. But it will be easier to make that decision together because now you're in a team mode, right? It's team marriage mode, making a choice together as that team marriage, as opposed to being, opposing combatants in a conflict.
Right. The target becomes the decision, and you two are both looking at the decision together, shooting at the same target.
Right.
I'm using a lot of shooting metaphors this episode.
Uh-oh. Military guy, right? Rather
than lobbing rounds at each other. And an example of this I can think of would be choosing furniture. Mm-hmm. If you got upset about, hey, I want this kind of furniture versus that, I want the rocker recliner versus the sofa or whatever. Okay, at the end of that, you've resolved, hey, we love each other, we're connected to this, we still need a new piece of furniture, and we haven't figured that out yet because now we need to do a little bit more research together. Maybe we need to go shopping together. Maybe we need to go online. Maybe we need to look at the benefits or talk through, okay, what's a win for both of us and what we're looking for this furniture. So you may not have chosen the couch or the love seat or the rocker recliner or whatever yet, but now you're close and you can do that. Okay, let's look at this catalog. Let's go shopping together. Sure. Make a date out of it. Go have lunch and go look at furniture and have a fun time with it. But you've got that stressful experience has ended at that point.
Mm-hmm. And really, couples don't fail because they lack knowledge, because it is out there. It is ubiquitous on the internet and otherwise. We couples will struggle because we lack capacity to be able to execute and implement this knowledge in that moment of conflict. So to resolve conflicts in a healthy way, catch yourself when your emotions try to take control, unplug, and remember, resolution comes from growing closer together, not from one person winning the fight, because when that happens, you're both losers. When couples learn how to do what they already know to do, connection grows, even in a conflict. Thanks for joining us for this Operation Thriving Marriage podcast episode. Please subscribe and tell your friends.
Jen and I started Operation Thriving Marriage to help couples and churches take marriages from merely surviving to thriving. We've got our book, we've got a blog, and resources for our coaching ministry, and you can bring us out for an Operation Thriving Marriage experience. For more information, go to OperationThrivingMarriage.com. That's OperationThrivingMarriage.com.